Hello and welcome back to this damn fool idealistic crusade. In this video I wanted to talk about and do a review of the wonderful memoir by Michael Deeley, which is of course entitled Blade Runners, Deer Hunters, and Blowing the Bloody Doors Off, which is of course his memoir about his time as a film producer and is focusing primarily on his most famous titles that he was associated with or producer of or passed through during his time as the head or chief at various studios or film producing entities. Of course, those primary, most famous works are referenced in the title, Blade Runner, The Deer Hunter, and The Italian Job. But he also does talk significantly about other films like The Man Who Fell to Earth and Don't Look Now, and even the sort of storied history of The Wicker Man. So it's a really well done memoir. He was actually co-written with Matthew Field, who did all the wonderful work about researching the history of the making of The Italian Job, wrote the book on the film, and of course produced all of the various extras and documentaries on the DVD and Blu-ray releases. Now, Deeley is a very interesting character. He also has a very interesting, very particular speaking voice, and he'll be somebody you'll recognize from looking at all of the extras about the various films. Particularly, all Blade Runner fans will immediately recognize Michael Deeley and his voice from all of the Blade Runner documentaries, particularly him participating in the Dangerous Days Blade Runner documentary. So some of the stories and things he goes over in regards to those specific films, if you're familiar with their production, they might be, familiar to you, but he also gets more into the details about his experience being on the producing end and also the business end of things. And he talks about the difference between being a hands-on producer or being just connected with the film because it was produced by the company he was running or working for at the time. The memoir itself runs close to 300 pages in this paperback printing. It's had a number of different printings and different cover art designs in both hardcover and paperback, so you can get it at a very cheap price. So it's definitely one of the memoirs I do very much recommend, and it reads quite quickly. So I really enjoyed just going through this again because I'd read it a number of years ago back when it came out, and then eventually picked up my own copy and then just always meant to reread it. But since I revisited The Italian Job and reviewed the Kino UHD release and reread the making of book, I figured, well, now's the time to reread Michael Deeley's book. And it's just an enjoyable film book to pick up and read. He does talk about his history and his growing up and how he basically got into the film business. And then he's also not the person to really mince words. He gets into the nitty gritty of the business side of things. He talks about his working relationship and the company he ran with actor Stanley Baker, the Oakhurst Company, which wound up actually producing The Italian Job. He talks about how he got involved with all the various famous films in his filmography, but also about the business side and about the continual decline of the British film industry and how that really just continued to turn everything topsy-turvy in terms of trying to produce films or run companies. He talks again about films that he had less to do with or has been blamed for their getting shuttled around or mutilated or recut, especially The Wicker Man, which he does talk in great detail about how he had to even struggle to get any version of the film released and how he had to try and maintain as much of it as possible, even though it wasn't something he was actively involved in. He talks about trying to get Don't Look Now finished. He talks about the production of The Man Who Fell to Earth. And again, he's not one to mince words, so he does talk about the ups and downs of making The Italian Job. He talks about his working relationship with the director Peter Collinson. He talks about the development of the script process with Troy Kennedy Martin. He talks about how the production went. He also gets into that level of detail about The Deer Hunter and, of course, Blade Runner. And the book really concludes with the legendary stories of the tumultuous production of Blade Runner and the aftermath with the completion guarantors trying to take over the picture, and then how the film was eventually released in its theatrical version. But if the book had a particular person that he is not very fond of, it's of course Michael Cimino, and talking about the production of The Deer Hunter and how Cimino ran that production, and then Michael Deeley very much states very clearly in multiple places that he's not Cimino's biggest fan, let's put it that way, and that a lot of the experience he had with Cimino in making The Deer Hunter was very much what ran away on Heaven's Gate, and so it's basically The Deer Hunter could have gone a similar way had Deeley not been as active as he was in trying to combat some different excesses and types of behavior. Of course, all these stories are being told from Deeley's perspective as the producer or the person in charge of that producing studio at the time, so they can be seen as one-sided, but he does seem to try to give a fair and balanced depiction of the events and anecdotes that he's telling. There's also quite a lot about working with Sam Peckinpah during the making of the film Convoy, which leads to probably what is the best title in the book, which is, I believe, Convoy, Sam Peckinpah, and a Blizzard of Cocaine. That's a chapter title right there. I especially love the "and a blizzard of cocaine." So that very much tells you what that chapter is going to be like. And he gets into the working relationship with Peckinpah at the time and how much of a struggle it was to even get a completed film done and edited and released, while he was also trying to make The Deer Hunter at the same time, which is definitely a major workload. So this is a really entertaining read. It's a really gripping read. It's perfect for all film lovers. And it's also done in a way that the book is understandable even to those who don't know a lot about the film industry or the British film industry at that time in particular. So this is a book that you can pick up if you're just a fan of The Italian Job or The Deer Hunter or Blade Runner, or just any of the films that Deeley produced or was involved in. This is a book you can pick up and read and get enjoyment and information out of, even if you don't even know the other films or you've only seen some of these films. But he managed to be involved with so many notable films from, particularly the 60s through the 80s, that there's basically something in here for everyone, and it's also a great examination of the British film industry at that time. So I do highly recommend this book, and it was really fun to go in and reread it again. So here I have the US paperback version with a nice usage of an actual film frame to put the title in, and of course keeping the sprocket holes on the side, which is always a nice touch. And I do really love the title, so it very much tells you the book you're picking up, and of course you have to have the bloody doors off on there somewhere. Here's of course the rear with a little photo of Deeley, and again, this is Deeley writing his memoirs with the assistance of Matthew Field, who also gets a credit. So I think the flow of the writing really does work really well, and I like how they actually got the title text of the films actually on the title page. And then we also even get some famous names providing the blurbs. Michael Caine gives a blurb on the back, and even Ridley Scott wrote a foreword. So this does have the actual approval and signing off of big names involved as well. So this goes through his entire career. It's broken up rather nicely into good chapter placement, and we even have some nice imagery, of course black and white, but still really nicely done and good quality as well. And we have a number of those sort of peppered throughout. And once we get to Blade Runner, we even have some of the concept art and beautiful art by Sid Mead. So this is a really good read. It's also very inexpensive and very well written, and covers some of the most iconic and notable films of 30 years in motion pictures, and gives you a good sort of miniature history of the British film industry as well. So this is also somebody who sort of was in between Hollywood and the British film industry and did a lot of back and forth work. Deeley does not mince words, and it is really well written. It's really easy to pick up and read, and you will just want to finish it in one sitting. And he covers pretty much every major film, even his time at EMI, where he was excited for Monty Python to make Life of Brian. And then at basically the 11th hour, some of the silly people in charge of the company got the wrong impression of the film and insisted that it be canceled. And so Deeley talks about having to be the one that had to cancel Life of Brian, even though he desperately did not want to, and they had already contracted to make the film, so they had to actually, do all this at the 11th hour because of people being silly. So he does cover every notable film and also talk about his personal life to a great degree. So it's a great film memoir, and I would recommend this to anyone looking for more information about not just these films, but also films in general and film history. And you also get a nice bird's eye view of both the Hollywood and British film industry in the 1960s through to the 1980s. So that's why I wanted to do a separate video about this, because I really enjoyed rereading Michael Deeley's memoir. And I would say this is an essential film book to have on your shelf, especially because it's very inexpensive, especially if you just go for the paperback. And it's still in print, and you can very easily get a copy. And then you can have this on the shelf to reference back to whenever you like. So, as always, I do hope my babblings about films, film history, and great film books has been at least somewhat fun and informative. I would very highly recommend Michael Deeley's book, so that's why I really felt the need to also cover it in a video, especially after rewatching The Italian Job. Maybe want to go and reread Deeley's book again. So as always, please do keep supporting independent bookstores wherever possible. Keep reading print books, keep reading film books especially, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.